Welcome to the BetterWallet Podcast, a podcast where we talk to everyday people who have changed their lives through managing their money. We talk about their money journeys, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
What's good, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the BetterWallet Podcast. As you guys know by now, the BetterWallet Podcast is all about demystifying the topic of money and sharing powerful money stories. And today, we are going to talk about the story of why the hell people are taking money out of their 401k in order to pay for Beyonce tickets. And Beehive, do not get mad at me. I'm just here to help. I'm just a messenger. And I want to make sure that you guys are avoiding this financial trap that I think a lot of people are getting into. I want to give you 3 top reasons on why you should not take money out of your 401k unless it's urgent, it's on your deathbed, you need to pay for a medical expense, something. But you should not be taking money out for any tickets, Beyonce tickets, whatever it might be. If it's not urgent and it's not life-threatening, you shouldn't be taking money out of your 401k. I want to give you reasons on why. And these are reasons that you probably don't know because you're not taught this. And when emergencies come up, you'd think that you can just dip into your 401k and take the money out because it is yours. But I'm going to talk to you about the risk of doing that. So let's start with, why and where did this all come from? Like, who's snitching, right? So I read an article from Bloomberg, and the Bloomberg article was talking about how people are taking money out of their 401k in order to pay for Beyonce tickets. Because we all know the tickets for Beyonce, the new tour she has coming up, they're going to be really expensive. They're really expensive now. I'm not sure what they are, but we talked about it on the last episode number 45, where we're talking about how you can afford to pay for Beyonce tickets by saving up through an HYSA, high yield savings account. And then the same week, I started hearing of articles of people saying they're taking money out of their 401k. So this is where it's all stemming from. So let's give a little bit of a background real fast. So number one, you might be asking, okay, I understand I shouldn't take money out of my 401k, but what are the options just for us to know? Depending on your plan rules, and that should start there because every 401k plan, 403b plan, TSA plan, they have different rules on how you can actually take the money out of your account if you're allowed to or not. Normally with a 401k plan rules, you do have the option of either taking out a withdrawal or taking out a loan from the 401k, right? So you do have the option of taking the money out for most plans. But again, depending on your plan rules, you have to look that up with your specific 401k, 403b, whatever it might be. You also could have the option of having both. When I was at Vanguard, I had the option of taking out a loan and I had an option of taking out a withdrawal. Now, the rules were pretty strict where in order to take out a withdrawal, it had to be pretty urgent. You had to prove it using paperwork. For example, if one of my siblings would have passed away and we didn't have money for a funeral, I could have taken the money out for the funeral. If I needed an emergency repair on the house, or if I needed to pay money to not get evicted from wherever I'm at, you could take money out of your 401k. However, what I would say is that even though I had those options, I tried my best to not take the money out because I knew of the potential penalties that could come along with it. But again, it all depends on your plan rules. So depending on how your employer, manages their 401k, you could take money out of your 401k and you could not. And everything that I'm about to mention to you guys, just to kind of level set, my first job at Vanguard, I came in, I did the Series 7 where I was a licensed stockbroker, but my first job was taking phone calls from people who want to take money out of their 401k for a withdrawal or a loan because they had some circumstance that was happening where they felt like they needed to take the money out. And it was my job to not only process that, but I also had to prove that it was a legitimate reason on why they're taking the money out. And they had to provide documentation, and it had to be one of the, I think it was 5 ways that they could actually take the money out, depending on their plan rules, if they're able to take the money out. So that was my first job. I was taking, 50 to 100 phone calls each day from people saying that they wanted to do that. I was also responsible for helping them to manage their current 401k investment assets. But again, that was my first job. I was all of 22, and that was my experience. So what I'm telling you comes from me understanding what people had to go through and the rules that they didn't know. And I want to teach you guys so you know the rules before you even try to take money out of your 401k and the risk of doing that. So you guys ready? Let's get into it. I would first start by saying that all of this that we're about to mention is within my Financially Bulletproof course. If you don't know what that is, you are missing out. It's 6 different modules of me walking through from how to build up your financial foundation to how to invest, what to invest in, how to set up the different accounts, all the way to tax management. Module number 5, we talk about how you can manage your retirement assets, as well as common mistakes that you want to miss out or common mistakes that you want to avoid while managing your 401k. Again, the Financially Bulletproof Investing course. I'll make sure I have that link in my bio if you want to check out the course. But we talk all things investing, all things, setting up your financial foundation. And then we also have bonus modules in there as well. How to invest for your kids, how to build up your credit, how to negotiate your salary. And then it comes along with bi-weekly group coaching, and you get that for 2 months. So that is my trademark course, and we talk about all of that in a lot of detail. All right, let's finally get into it. So number 1, the number 1 reason that you should not take money out of your 401k. If you withdraw the money from your 401k, wherever it is, no matter the amount, you have to pay taxes and a 10% penalty on the earnings if you withdraw the money out. And that means you have money in and you take it out and you don't have to pay it back. That would be a loan. We'll talk about that in number 2 and number 3. So for example, let's say you take out $50,000 in order to pay for something for your home. And of that $50,000, $10,000 of that would be interest, right? So $10,000 interest, $40,000 being principal, the money that you put in. You would have to pay $1,000 in just fees on that $10,000, 10%, for taking the money out. That goes straight to the government. So what they say is, if you take money out of your 401k, we're going to penalize you because Uncle Sam wants you they want you to invest for your retirement because, obviously like Social Security is not going to pay for everything. We want you to invest for your retirement. And if you take that money out earlier than 59.5 with a traditional 401k, then we're going to charge you a penalty. We're going to charge you a penalty, and we're also going to charge you whatever, your tax rate is. So it's going to be looked at as if it's income, right? So if you make, $50,000 a year and you take out $50,000, they're going to look at that $50,000 that you took out, and they're going to charge taxes on the earnings, right? So of that, 50,000, 10,000 being earnings in this example, they're going to charge whatever the percentage might be. I tend to use a flat rate to make it really simple, like 25%, 20%, whatever it might be. But we use a different rate where it's more of like buckets that we use for our tax rate and not necessarily a flat rate, right? So that's the way that we go about doing it in the United States. But I try to use a smaller, or I should say a flat rate for that. So because of that, it could be really expensive to take money out of your 401k in the form of withdrawal, right? So using the example, $10,000 being earnings, 25% of that, for example, could go to taxes, whatever your tax rate is. So let's say it's $2,500 for the amount of taxes you have to pay. And then, as we mentioned, $1,000 of that $10,000, the 10% penalty, would have to go to the government in the form of a fee. So in this example, taking out $50,000, $10,000 of it being earnings, you would have to pay taxes or fees to the government, and it will be around $3,500 in this example. That's a lot of money for you to have to pay back to the government because you didn't adequately prepare for the situation that you may or may not be in, right? So if you did not do that, let's say you put money into a high yield savings account, like I talk about in episode 45, if you had a high yield savings account, then you wouldn't have to worry about that, right? Because you already had that money saved up incrementally over time, and you would avoid whatever that fee might be, right? So again, if you withdraw money out of your 401k, you not only have to pay taxes on the earnings, but you also have to pay a 10% penalty, and that could be really expensive, a really expensive financial mistake. I wanted to take a quick break from the episode to discuss one of the biggest crises we're facing today. The crisis is the lack of financial literacy. When you made your first paycheck, did anyone tell you what to do with it? Probably not. This is why 63% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and get this, half of which make more than six figures. So what I did was I took my expertise as a retired financial advisor and industry professional to give you a complete financial checklist that you can use to get your finances in order in less than 10 minutes. It's completely free, and I have it linked in my show notes. I want you to take complete command of your financial future this year, and this checklist is going to help you get started. Okay, let's get back to the episode. Let's move on to number 2. So 401k loans. 401k loans, they sound great, right? Because you take the money out and you have to pay yourself back. But the challenge with that is that the interest that you're paying back on a month-to-month basis could be less than the amount of money that it could have climbed to if you would have just kept the money in there, right? So you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot because you take the money out, you have to pay yourself not only the money that you took out, but you also have to pay interest on that amount. Normally is the requirement. And you're losing out on the potential gains that you could have had in your account if you just let it stay and you didn't touch it, right? So let's go to an example. So, and I should give some context here. You have to pay back the money that you already took out, and then you're normally charged what they call a prime rate, which is the base rate that most banks charge people for loans, plus normally 1 or 2% on top of that. So let's give a current day example. You have money in your 401k. Let's say you have $100,000 in your 401k. You take out a $10,000 loan because you want to pay for your Beyonce tickets and all your friends, right? Great thing to do if you didn't care about your finances, right? So $10,000 loan, the current prime rate right now, as of February 2023, is 7.5% is the prime rate, right? Give or take a couple tenths of a point. Plus, let's say 2%. So that means that 9.5% would basically be the interest that you have to pay back over the duration of your loan payback period. So using that example of $10,000 as being your loan, you would have to pay $950 in addition to that $10,000. So close to $11,000 that you would have to pay back, right? The other thing that comes along with it is the fact that some companies, I'll give you the example of Vanguard. So when I was at Vanguard, you not only would have to pay that money back, plus the interest, plus 1 or 2% over the prime rate, you also were not allowed to make a contribution to your 401k during that time. So they completely block you from making contributions to your 401k when you're paying that back. Isn't that crazy? Right? Like, you're not only shooting yourself in the foot because you're taking the money out because you didn't adequately prepare. You have to pay the prime rate plus 1 or 2% on top of that. And you might be shooting yourself in your other foot because you're not allowed to put money into your 401k during the time that you have a loan. That's the IRS penalizing you for not taking advantage of what the 401k is all about. And the 401k is, hey, look, we're going to give you a tax advantage way of growing your wealth. And that 59.5, you can take the money out, you have to pay taxes, but we want to make sure that that money is tax deferred during the time that you're investing. And we want to make sure that you're adequately prepared for retirement. What a lot of people do is they dip into those specific funds and they find themselves not having enough money for retirement. And you might say, hey, like, retirement's so far away. Once you start getting to the habit of taking money out of your 401k, you will realize that money will slowly dwindle away. You start to use it as a crutch. And what I want you guys to do is to use your high yield savings account as a crutch. Even if you have, I don't think you should have your money at the bank, but like, even if you have the money at the bank, that's much better, in my opinion, than taking money out of your 401k. I want you guys to have a separate account for all things that are related to your goals. Let your goals be travel, let it be to go on, and see these tours or to the Super Bowl, whatever it might be. I want to make sure you guys have that money on the side. That way, if you ever need to dip into it, you can. All right. Let's get into the tip number 3. And this is a big one. Let's say you take out a 401k loan. If you leave your job voluntarily or involuntarily, you could have to pay back that loan ASAP. What does that mean? That means if I took out that $10,000 loan today and I lose my job tomorrow, instead of me having to pay back that loan over the course of 5 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it might be, they could say you have to pay that loan back in 30, 60, or 90 days, right? What if I don't have the bread? Tough luck, right? Tough luck. Like, if you want to leave, if you're in a bad situation, you don't like your job, don't like your boss, whatever it might be, you have to pay it back. If they fire you, you have to pay it back, right? You get laid off, you have to pay it back, and you have to pay it back immediately. What I want you to do is to avoid all of that, again, by adequately preparing. And in this example, right? So like, let's say you get fired and you can't pay it back. What happens? So with the withdrawal, you would have to pay a 10% penalty. With a loan, you don't have to pay a 10% penalty, but you would have to pay a 10% penalty on that loan that you weren't able to pay back. And it also becomes taxable. So I'm going to say it again. If you get fired from your job, let's say you take a $10,000 loan out today, you get fired from your job tomorrow, they could require you to pay that money back within 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it might be. And if you're not able to pay it back, which is likely, you could have to pay a 10% penalty on the earnings of that loan, as well as it being taxable. They'll look at it as being money that you received in a year that Uncle Sam didn't get his bread on. So, right. So Uncle Sam didn't get his bread and he wants to make sure he's getting that money. So he's going to go ahead and charge you the penalty and taxes, right? So again, you want to go back to it's actually 46, episode 46, the last episode, in order to learn more about how you can set up a high yield savings account to avoid all of this stuff. But again, I'm telling you this stuff because I love you. I'm telling you this because I want to make sure that you're not falling victim. Like, I've seen many and many clients fall victim to this in the past. And as you may think that the money is yours, yes. But in order to get that money out, it's really expensive. You're better off going and preparing for it beforehand when money's good, when your cash flow is flowing. You want to make sure that you're putting money into these accounts during that time and not waiting until the worst possible case scenario and then having to take the money out, right? So that is it, y'all. So I'm going to go and give you just lightning speed the top 3. So number 1, if you withdraw the money out from your 401k, you have to pay taxes and a 10% penalty on the earnings if you withdraw the money. Number 2, 401k loans, they sound amazing, but in a lot of situations, you could be losing money because you're taking the money out of the market, and likely when you're paying yourself back with interest and the principal that you took out, it could not be as much as the amount of money that you could have had if you just left it in there because of market appreciation. And then number 3, which, as I mentioned, is the biggest one, if you leave your job, that loan, instead of it being over a course of 5 years that you could pay it back, you might have to pay it back within 90 days. So you want to avoid all of that. So guys, those are the top 3. Of course, reach out if you ever have any questions. But my job is to make sure that you're not falling victim to these financial mistakes that I see all the time. And I want you guys to adequately prepare for the future. If you guys are thinking about your finances and you're trying to find a way to get your finances together, please go click the link in the show notes, and I'll give you a 21-point checklist on how you can get your finances together within maybe even 10 minutes, right? So download that checklist. You'll walk through and not only show you what you need to do in order to get your finances together, I also talk to you about the how. How can you go about doing it? And also, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, if you learned something new, please go and rate the podcast. Tell me what you think. I do all this for free, and it's because I want you guys to learn from either my mistakes and the mistakes that I've seen in the past. So please, wherever you guys listen to podcasts, leave a review. It keeps the podcast going, and I thank you guys in advance. And I appreciate you guys listening in to the BetterWallet Podcast. With that, we are out, and we'll talk to you at the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to the BetterWallet Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you found any value, we'd appreciate a rating and review.